Welcome into another edition of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, S.J. Munoz with you. We're back in the saddle, talk some sports and talk some wagering here. We'll do a little college football talk here, a little too early talk for you to have some fun with that. And a couple other little topics we'll dive into as well here, kind of related to the media front as well. S.J., it's been a pretty nice week here, actually, this last week, though. We had a little bit of a heat wave. I don't know about where you're at there for a while, but it's cooled back down, and it's kind of that nice summertime, sit on the patio deck and enjoy it type weather.
Yeah, but when we get to the drinks later, I kind of felt along those lines. But we say too early, but I guess for us, it's never too early. So that's kind of the way we're looking at it. And I mean, for myself, I'm just that damn freaking Vidya game came out, and now I'm just like, all right, let's freaking go, man.
Yeah,
I haven't slept much since it did, but and of course there was that network outage that got everybody up in arms, and obviously there's greater concern than the video game. People that are actually traveling and trying to do their jobs and stuff. So. We're not making light of it, but at the same time, it's like, man, that was a hell of a experience. They're trying to get that game downloaded, but it's well worth the wait. I was kind of just a quick sidebar here. They definitely did a good job with the game. As obviously we didn't want it to be gone for that long, but they did a good job, and it's definitely for me it topped the last Madden, so that's a good sign.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, the video game has got people in arms, that's for sure. That's been a lot of the talk. If you spend any time on the interwebs, you've heard about it, and you've been seeing people talk about it. And yeah, it is, just from what I've seen, I haven't played the game, but just seeing the screenshots and all the detail that's gone into it and the gameplay looks fantastic. So I think they knew that. They kind of took their time because they could have rushed into it, I think, a little bit sooner than they did, but they felt like, hey, we're going to get this right, getting all the players on board kind of thing, because that was part of the deal. And yeah, it looks pretty cool. It was apparently cool enough that Arch Manning decided he was going to be in the game. So I mean, it's got to be good, right?
I think I might have blocked that Texas team on the game already. I think that's like a little. You just got to have the code for it. But yeah, then we kind of said why we like why college football is kind of like our wheelhouse there, and I think just the tradition and all the kind of the songs, the I guess like the bands and all that type of stuff. That's kind of like, especially for like a video game, that really lends itself to like making a really cool product, especially with the kind of technology they have now. Like I was going through it, and they had an old YouTube video of like all the years of the games and just like how it progressed. And I mean, you remember they used to catch it with their feet,
Yeah.
and they would just like fall down, like dive and tackle. Like it's come a long way, so that's definitely a good thing. But it's that funny to look back and be like, man, we used to play this and be like, this is awesome, just because I mean you didn't know any better. That's what you had.
Yeah. Yeah, for a while there, I don't know if you remember, but there was another one that was out at the same time early on in the days. It was called Game Breaker, that was obviously just about the same type of game,
Right.
But we absolutely love playing that game. So our buddies, we'd get together and we'd have the tournaments down in the basement with different TVs going and playing that game. And that was one of them where it was like, if you knew the right play calls, like there was like a massive glitch where like, yeah, you can't you're gonna miss this guy because he like moves from here 5 yards to the other direction and you miss him. So yeah, it's just awesome, that kind of stuff. But you learn and adapt with that. And I'm sure there's probably a few things game-wise that are going to, irk some people here or there, but it's come, light years ahead of what we remember as youngins, that's for sure. So it is pretty fun. Some of the jokes and memes, obviously, it's just been good to kind of, take in and follow and enjoy. So it's been good fodder for everybody to kind of get their minds off the rest of the world, that's for sure. As we get rolling, and we'll talk more about that kind of stuff, we do like to talk about what we're drinking as well, and I guess depending on how your game goes as the head coach of East Carolina in your dynasty, you might have to pull back a few more beverages along the way. But one that I pulled out here recently, this is just kind of a random find. I wasn't necessarily kind of looking. I guess I was searching for something else and I didn't see it, so I was like, I'll find something else sounds interesting and grab it. This was before I was going to play in a golf tournament one day, so I found this from Revolution Brewing Company called Sun Crusher Summer Ale, and it's very much kind of a pale ale to me. The way it tastes, it is fairly hoppy, 5.3, so it's got a little kick to it. But yeah, refreshing summer beer. I can see why they've labeled it what it is, and it's enjoyable. What are you drinking over there?
Yeah, well, we've mentioned kind of getting to that, I guess, patio season or just, enjoying the weather type of thing. And so I kind of felt more like a cocktail than a beer. And also the fact that I've been doing some traveling. So maybe I put a few more back than I was planning on just with having to drive and road trips and that thing. But this kind of, talking about the old video games and a little bit of nostalgia, I finally got my hands on that gin and juice cocktail that Dre and Stoop have been peddling, and I went with the passion fruit, but it's actually pretty good. It's like about 6% alcohol per volume too, so it's got a nice little kick to it. But I kind of just had to do it, just kind of felt in that old school mood, and it was a nice day out, like you said, just kind of felt right. It all just hit right.
Yeah, that's a good little mix in there for sure. Mix it up a little bit. So yeah, if you have any suggestions again for us, please let us know. I'd love to get some more packed away. I guess part of my problem right now too though is that last year I had the fridge out on the deck take a dump on me, and I have not replaced it yet. So it's on my own fault. It's my own doing. But I don't have a lot of space, it seems, right now to pack away extra ones. But I've been figuring it out one way or another, playing the Jenga in the refrigerator. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, I'd love to get some stuff stocked up before it does get into full on football season mode, because that's when we
Hey man, at
know
least you got
we're
something in
drinking.
there. I mean, as long as it's full with something,
That's true.
I think you're living pretty good.
That's true. And luckily, I guess we live in a advanced society these days where finding one isn't usually far away. So I can get in the car and go get some more. Uh, so that's,
Hey, if you don't want to drive, Instacart or whatever you
yeah,
got, like
exactly.
sometimes you don't even have to drive.
Well, and take an Uber, as Ollie Gordon might
There you go. There
suggest
you
to you.
go. Yep.
Uh,
Being responsible. Good job. You're a good man.
Speaking of which, that wasn't one of our topics we were going to bring up, but I just as a little sidebar before we get into the next thing. Uh, Interesting how that whole saga has gone down. If you paid attention at all, with Gordon getting in trouble with the drinking, and then Mike Gundy kind of making some poor comments at the media days about it, which he normally does. But just again, read the room a little
Like,
bit.
dude, you're like trying to like. I mean, sometimes at some point, it's almost like he's just doing it just for the reaction, right? I mean, like you can't really be serious at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah, yeah. So I think we've kind of touched on that recently about all the, just I guess whether or not you're gonna, punish somebody in general. But I don't know. It's getting kind of funky with how everybody's dealing with it differently, and I think at some point you're probably gonna have to have some kind of universal rules that, just like a league would, that's paying players, fines or a certain amount of suspension or
Yeah.
whatever it is. That might come to a head at some point with the way things are now. But anyways, one thing we wanted to touch on here before we get into some more college football talk was a couple of other like media type related things. And SJ, I know you've been kind of more locked in on watching these programs. I haven't really followed them yet. But the Hard Knocks series, of course, is ramped up once again. They kind of do the different stages of it now, where they're going to do different teams at different parts of the year. And then also, of course, the new Receiver show came out on Netflix. Of course, if anybody paid attention in the last year or two, they know that the quarterback series was the one that kind of started that type of coverage, and was very popular, obviously, right away. And now they're doing a different position. So I know they kind of struggled, it sounded like, the second time around with the quarterback stuff, trying to get people to agree to it. So they're mixing things up here and getting some other positions involved. But I know you had some observations on how these things are being covered a little bit.
Yeah, since the last one you mentioned, we'll just stick with the Netflix deal, the receiver. And what did they start with? Like I think F1 they did, and then
Mm-hmm.
initially, and then like they did break point or breaking point for tennis. So it's and honestly, I think they do a real good job. Who's ever the video production? I know it's a Netflix, it airs there, but I don't know who actually is in charge of doing the production, editing, all that stuff. But either way, it's I think they do a good job to start off there. Like I don't think it's this isn't bad about the program. Like my take, I guess, on it being like more in the sports world and kind of like just the vantage point I'm getting from it. Like they're really kind of they're kind of airing it out more than it was. Think of Hard Knocks when it started. It's more towards that era of like kind of just there literally is a camera in your face all the time, and it's business as usual because. I'm still one of the few of. I mean, I've talked to other people that used to watch Hard Knocks, and they kind of it did get a little stale. I get that, but to me, I just like the presentation that HBO does with any type of sports or show. To me, that like keeps me interested. I like the way
Mm-hmm.
I just like the way they package things. Like, and I agree to the point where it was getting like a little bit stale. And I'll get to this later, but I do like how they kind of shifted to this preseason, more of the off-season scouting type of angle to the show, and I think that's kind of giving it new life. But just back to the Netflix show, I mean, just the whole thing. Just we could talk for quite a while on this, but just to kind of put a cap on it in general, it's just they're letting a lot of information out there that I know for a fact that teams and coaches and obviously, of course, executives and the league as a whole does not want to be aired, especially to the general public. And you got to figure, what does Netflix have? Hundreds of millions of subscribers. Like, I understand not everybody that subscribes is probably watching this, but you're still hitting a pretty damn big audience. And, you've got players basically admitting to playing through injuries. One of the guys has hand, foot, and mouth disease, which is like, first off, who the hell gets that? Secondly, like, that's something you probably need to stay home and like just. I get that you're dedicated, and I mean, it's cool. It shows how much these players want to play. Like one of the games, Devonta Adams for the Raiders. I mean, he had a grade 3 AC in his shoulder, AC sprain. Basically means like one more, and it would basically be off the bone. And he got whatever he needed to get done and got back in the game. And I mean, they lost that one, but still, like, he was willing to like do that for a team that didn't even end up making the playoffs, or was kind of just like, I mean, they had a chance at that point, but still, it's like it is cool that it shows like. Because the obviously the common thing is all these guys get paid all this money and all this stuff, but there's a hell of a risk involved with that big amount of money. And at that league, your money's not always guaranteed, other than that signing bonus and what you kind of negotiate there. So it is cool. I like for people to see that and be like, these guys do want to win. Like, it does matter. It's not just a paycheck. Or the families, on the other hand, which is someone pointed out to me, a lot of them are kind of just cheering for their family member. They're not exactly, they might be losing or the game. Like, I want to see him get a touchdown. Like, and someone kind of pointed out to me, I was talking to someone at work about, I was like, yeah, you're right. They're a little bit more selfish than the actual player. Like, they're just worried about their guy, which you get it too, because at any moment they could be traded. They could be, released, whatever. So, but, kind of, it's obviously, layered. There's a lot of angles to take. But for me, it was just kind of like I could see, maybe some of these things coming to an end, unfortunately, just because of the information that's getting out there. So hopefully that's not the case. Don't want to be like a downer negative on the situation, but I was honestly really surprised that they allowed that stuff to air, especially at least with the Netflix one. I don't know, I know you haven't seen it too closely, but the fact that they're kind of admitting to these injuries was a little bit shocking.
Well, yeah, and it brings up a lot of different issues. Not just for them, but for obviously other players as well, because they're all part of a collective union, essentially. The Players Association, and they have certain rules in place to protect themselves. And if the other teams know that these guys are doing this stuff, to essentially put themselves at more risk, then they're going to say, well, why the hell should we have all these things in place to help protect you if you don't care? Like, it's a double-edged sword for sure. And
when you think about the trainers and stuff, I mean, the doctors, I mean, there's HIPAA things with them as well. It's still a medical deal. So as far as that info getting out and what they're obligated to do and not do, like, I'm just, it seems like a little bit of a slippery slope. So I mean, I want it to keep airing. I'm not against it. I'm not saying I'll get this shit off TV or streaming. I guess it's not TV, but at the same time, like, maybe chill out a little bit and don't ruin a good thing. That's kind of I guess the angle I'm coming at it as.
Yeah, and you want the show certainly to have that like level of authenticity, and that's kind of the point. You're getting a peek behind the curtain, but yeah, there's some things that you should not be sharing, and I guess that's more so on the players and the teams, I guess, to just step forward and say that. I mean, from the production team standpoint, they probably don't give a rip. I mean, give me whatever, yeah.
More of it, keep it coming, yeah. It's not, definitely it's not on Netflix. It was just like more of a like, crap, there's going to be some, edicts from on high, and then
they're going to say you can't do
the little
this,
bit that we were getting, we get nothing after that,
Yeah, and it's it's a little dangerous, I guess, from the overall just kind of information releasing type standpoint, but the production companies, themselves obviously go in with a certain agreement with the teams in the first place. So I think they kind of know what's going on, and obviously the players are aware that they're around. So it's on them to be a little bit more discreet about that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see moving forward. Like you said, if it does get kind of a kibosh put on it, or if it gets much more limited. If it's you don't see a whole lot of the maybe off the field type of things. It's more just the in-game type of action. But from what I saw in some of the clips, it's you even get a little bit of that there too. So it's tough, and I guess that's the extra layer of it too. When you mentioned, yeah, it's on a Netflix platform that is an exclusive membership type of thing, but the world that we live in now, we all know that little bits and pieces of everything gets put out everywhere because of social media. So
Yeah.
your reach is far beyond what your original platform is, and somebody eventually is going to find out if it's an interesting nugget and something you don't maybe necessarily want somebody to see after the fact. It used to be we were like, oh well, hopefully nobody will pay attention to that part, right?
Well, even just in promotional pieces, marketing the shows and stuff, they're gonna have a clip here and there. So you might not see the whole show, but you're gonna see the salacious or like the kind of the clickbait in video form, if you will. So yeah, you're gonna get it one way or the other. So I mean, I hope it keeps going. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bag on the show. It's just I would mostly just take shock that this was given the okay and the green light to be aired.
Yeah. Well, and then the other side of this too is, of course, like I said, we already have heard that kind of multiple other players have just kind of said no thanks. I don't want to have this viewpoint on me, or I don't want this around. And I think a large part of that for some of them is just the time commitment and the just being that open to someone else, having to kind of cater to someone else's wants and needs, and not being able to focus just on your own business. And I can understand that from their viewpoint too. So yeah, it's going to be a will the league allow it type of thing, and how many of the players are going to still be okay with it, and especially if they see somebody else that does get a little bit of a talking to because of something they said, and they might think, well, I'm going to stay away from that because I don't want that to happen to me, kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of angles to this, I guess, and part of it too comes from the other side, which I know you're going to bring up as well. It's the front office sometimes that has the issue to deal with.
Yeah, that was, I guess, when we're shifting over to the hard knocks portion of this conversation. That was the takeaway for me, at least. Was just we kind of have people that have followed sports or kind of paid attention to any type, especially when it comes to professional. But I guess it's seeping into college too. But when you're in the financial side or just dealing with contracts or making trades and that type of thing, you always kind of had at least I did, the notion that these executives aren't exactly the most upstanding citizens. I wouldn't paint them in an honest, moral light. And I guess that's kind of the nature of the business too. Not saying they're doing anything necessarily illegal, but maybe it's not as upfront as they portray it to be. Whether it be through an interview or a press conference or whatever it might be. So I kind of already had that notion, but just seeing the kind of the way that the Giants went about with their GM, the Saquon Barkley deal specifically, but just some of the movement with the roster in general is just a little bit more smarmy than I even thought it might be. And it was almost like kind of, just playing two sides there where, it was kind of given the impression that he's appeasing the owner, which, it's, the Giants owner is a little bit more, I guess most owners in general, but he's definitely on the upper side of things with, an age. So he's kind of, a soft spoken guy, which is rare with NFL owners. He honestly didn't seem to meddle, basically the damn total opposite of like a Jerry
Yeah.
Jones or a Dan Snyder. Like, he was out of it. But I mean, he didn't, let his opinions known, that especially when it comes to Barkley, the literal quote was, or that he said was, I have a lot of trouble sleeping at night if he goes to Philadelphia. And that's what ended up happening. But so basically there's some back and forth over the phone. And of course, I do think this show is a little bit more like not as loose with the footage they're going to put out, because it's a deal with through the NFL. I mean, the
Yeah.
NFL, like a partnership, so it's NFL Films is who owns the rights to the stuff. So I don't think they're just going to let anything go. But they did reveal a little bit more than you thought. It was the fact that you could see that it was kind of like the Giants GM was trying to play a little bit hardball and kind of backfired in him, and then he basically turned around and kind of just said, "Oh, they balked at my offer," because the agreement was they were going to let him Barkley test the market. He'd come back with what he thought
Could
he could
get.
get somewhere else, and they'd match it. And
Mm-hmm.
if they matched it, then he'd stay with the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants GM says they matched it, and then they said, "Oh no, we're going to get more." Of course, the other side says so. It's always two sides of the
Yeah.
story. So it's not always against the GM, but at the same time, I do think some of the conversations were a little bit kind of just saying like, we'll be okay without you, but we want you."
Yeah.
And I mean
Uh-huh.
that's kind of, I mean, that's the mindset you'd have with most players. But when it comes to a type of franchise player that without him you might not have won 2 or 3 games
Yeah.
in the last few years you've had. So there's places, times and places to pick those type of battles, and I don't think that was the one. So it was a little bit. I know people were kind of upset, especially I'm guessing the Giants fans specifically would be like, "What the hell, bro? You went, to the hated rival." But I mean, I kind of see why he did it. When you see the background and all that stuff, it's the fact that he was kind of just saying like, you're no good anymore, because he's one of those guys where in his mind, his data that he kept saying, the data shows, the data shows. I think if I heard that one more time, I'd throw my damn remote to the wall. But his belief is that 27 years old, a running back's done.
Yeah.
So that was his whole deal. He didn't want to commit to anything past that. So I mean, we'll see. Maybe he'll end up being right in the long run. But that definitely, especially you're going to see him twice next year in a team that got real Super Bowl aspirations. It's going to be a long. I think it's going to be a tough couple years for New York Giants, especially if he's still there. Be for the GM there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's something that just that kind of look weighs further on your job. I mean, not to say that the rest of people that are overseeing him don't know that already, but still, when they're getting that up close personal look and they know that the fan base is not necessarily real happy about it, that gives you a little bit more. You can take a couple of chinks out of that short leash.
When you think about it too, first times things go south, that footage is coming right back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. The first time he goes off for 200 and a couple touchdowns against the Giants, you know damn well they're going to show that.
They'll be holding up 27 signs in the crowd. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I thought was interesting, because I saw the one clip, I'm sure that's been the one that's been most popular with their conversation, kind of about exactly what you said. How he set him up with, we feel like you should go test the market. You should go do that.
I mean, it's almost like a slap in the face telling like one of the best players at their position in the league test the market. To me, that's how I took it.
Yeah. Well, and it was pretty telling at the end when Saquon kind of just came back to him with, "Well, you know what I said, you know what I want." Like, he's like, "Why are we doing this dance if you know where we're at?" Like, it's like you're I'm pretty sure most of your guys could figure out what that number probably is or close to it, and let's make the deal. Like, let's not fool around with all this nonsense and try to delay this thing. And yeah, to his to Saquon's defense, that's how you would take it. I would, as a player, like, why don't we just figure this out? If I'm that important to you, why are we doing this? So,
well, to me, I mean, I guess you don't know the exact numbers, but it didn't seem like, from what you could gather from what you saw, it wasn't like he was asking for anything outrageous for someone in his position with what he's accomplished. So
yeah,
it's almost like they're, and when you talk about your guys too, like the friggin' staff they had working on this was just friggin' 10 to 12 scouts and 7 or 8 player personnel. It's like, come on, like you can't figure this out. Like, let's go. Like I mean, all hands on deck, and just like, I don't know. It's not like they were, kind of just like were caught off guard. That's how they made it look too. That's why I was kind of like, I don't know. To me, it was a little bit of like, this kind of playing the victim a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that in general, you kind of maybe they kind of set themselves up for this look too, because if Hard Knocks is going to go that route, and they kind of changed up, here's the different look at it from the off-season perspective, like that's the kind of shit you're going to have to show. Like, what else are you going to do? That's what people see.
Going and getting coffee and checking your email. Like.
yeah. So I don't know. It is definitely interesting. Yeah, and it does raise some other eyebrows on how do we approach this moving forward if this does turn out to be a big black eye type of deal. Anymore the way the media coverage is, and all these guys that know somebody a lot of this shit gets leaked out. You just don't see it in front of your face for like, in 4K. You're just believing it from somebody's, story. But
Speaking, I mean, I like glad you brought that up, the leaked out point. That was like one of the first things that we were watching it with my wife and the kids, and they were just like, "Hey, that's the exact same thing he said that like Rappaport or Schefter saying
yeah.
on TV." So it's not like oh, they're great journalists. I'm not saying they're doing fine. They're doing good, good at their job because they basically just kiss enough ass to get where they want to be. But at the same time, it's like they're literally calling you and be like, "Say this." And they want to like gauge the reaction or gauge how someone responds to that comment. So I don't know. To me, it's a little bit. I don't know. It happens in all professional sports, but I don't know. It's this little bit more of that gamesmanship at the NFL, and to me, it gets to be like a bit much. It's like, especially when you know that it's actually happening. It's one thing if you're kind of like not familiar and you're like, oh, this guy's digging in and getting his sources and all that. But when it's like word for word, it's like, okay, we know what's going on here.
Yeah, exactly. That is an interesting little. I don't, obviously we could make this a whole other topic, but just a little nugget, journalism wise. And one thing that I guess I always kind of had in the back of my mind doing, some coverage, like, I don't know. I've seen those, we've seen those type of guys for a long time, and it's gotten to be where it's like even more ridiculous than it used to be. It used to be just like, oh, this reporter who does write good stories found this out. Now it's like this guy's the whatever insider. That's what he does. Like he finds little nuggets to tweet, kind of
thing. Get the Woj bombs, for example. Or it's like, it's like a shtick almost. Like.
Yeah. And I just don't know, like for me personally, I just don't even know if I could do that. Like, I don't know. I don't.
Just be at someone's beck and call like 24/7. They text you and then you put it on.
You gotta be worried about every stupid little thing that happens in the world, and then everything's breaking news, and like, and you gotta kiss a million asses so that everybody likes you, so that they'll tell you stuff, and you have to believe them. And obviously you probably get burned plenty too. I don't know. That's just a weird world to live in. I couldn't do it, I don't think.
Yeah, it takes an interesting individual, but I mean, there's plenty of people knocking at the door that want to do it, but it's, but I think part of it too is you don't realize it until you start doing it, and then you get kind of either drunk off the fame or the money gets so damn good that you can't really go backwards. But I'm with you. Like it would be I don't know. I guess it depends on just how much self-respect you have as well. But I guess it would come down to, of course, like it'd be cool to say you worked for this outlet or you had made this much money, but I don't know. To me, that's the journalism part of that job is left long ago. When you get to that point, it's just kind of just a little errand boy.
Yeah.
Well paid. I mean, don't get me wrong, when you're famous, but
he's getting your money, I guess. Yeah. Interesting world for sure. And we'll I guess we'll know down the road what happens, because obviously either these programs will change or they'll go away, and then we'll have an idea of what was good and what was bad in the minds of those that control the strings, I guess. So yeah, interesting topic, and I'm sure there's much more of that to come too. Obviously, we've seen these programs kind of come to life really a lot more within the last couple of years, and I'm sure other sports are going to follow along suit in some fashion. We've started to see, some changes in just the way that things are covered in general as far as the actual events are concerned. So the behind the scenes stuff certainly is there too, and a lot of those entities also, like the leagues themselves, will try to create and drive some of that on their own just through natural channels like social channels and whatnot. So you see that all the time, but it is a precarious world, and where it goes from here we don't really know, but we'll find out. The next topic we wanted to dive into is, of course, we alluded to it right from the top. Way too early, not too early for us, because we're always thinking about this shit. And
we're trying to make them some money too. So we're doing the research. We're putting the hours in. We don't got anybody texting us the answers, like one of those insiders. So we got to do our own homework.
Yeah, I don't have eyes in every camp. This so and so is breaking out. Like, I have no clue how that stuff's going.
Yeah, someone's got chicken pox or swamp ass. We'll never know.
Yeah, but obviously, as a fan in general, you love to eat up some of the off-season commentary and drink the Kool-Aid, of course, for your team coming into the season. That's part of the fun. But then also, when it comes to the gambling world, one of the fun things that a lot of people like to do is take a look at the win totals for the season. Now, this is I don't know. It's kind of a little bit of one of those gray areas still. I think because it can be something that can be a lot of fun to pay attention to, and it can win you some decent coin if you have some pretty good inklings on a program. Obviously, we've learned time and time again that college football is very unpredictable, and that's why we don't, win money hand over fist every week, and just tell you about how all the money we're laying around and sitting in. But, some of these, you can find some kind of nuggets in there once in a while with these over under totals. Amazing the crap that goes behind all this stuff too from the booking standpoint. Like they put all these different stats and algorithms and returnees and transfers, and I'm sure it's a fucking disaster trying to put this stuff together in the first place, but somehow or another they come up with these numbers on what teams are going to win here during the college football season, and they set a line and you're trying to bet whether their team's going to be over it or under it. And we're going to take a look and give you a few that we're kind of peeking at here as those are started to come out here just recently as we get a little bit closer now here to the season, a month or month and a half away now here. So, SJ, this is fun stuff, and I know that you were kind of have a few in mind already. We'll kind of just maybe bounce back and forth here a little bit, but I guess right off the top, give us one right away that you had on your list that you're taking a look at here.
Yeah, just like you said, just to start off here, it's a little bit of a slippery slope here with these totals. So it's going to be more of those, when we do the emoji, it's going to be more like the whiskey variety probably
Yeah.
on most of these. Just because I'm myself, like I like to bet, like as close as I can to the actual event and get paid out as soon as I can after it ends. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
don't have
that
that.
weight. Yeah.
I mean, I'll do some futures and stuff, but I when it comes to like making the bigger money and stuff, or what I'm going to actually win on and maybe cash in, I like to do it in a short amount of time, just because my mind don't work like that. I can't be, waiting for weeks for that ticket to cash. I just
Mm-hmm.
that's not my personality. So, but as we get into them, first one I saw that I liked was Florida State. They're actually at 9.5, which like that's not like a great number, but especially coming off a 13-win season, where if the quarterback doesn't go down, who knows how that season ends? You know what I mean? So they got a pretty good pretty good squad coming back. But the thing that mostly to me was their schedule. Uh, Outside of Clemson and Notre Dame, I didn't see a game that they wouldn't be favored in. And honest, they actually, as of today, earlier this afternoon when I checked the line, they actually are favored against Clemson. So of the games that they have that have lines, Notre Dame's the only game where they would be an underdog. So I mean, you figure a 14 game schedule, if you're only an underdog in one, getting 10 wins out of that shouldn't be a huge huge ass there. So I'd like them to hit that over 9.5. I'm 10 though. I mean, I'm thinking 10. I'm not thinking 11 or more. But
Yeah.
but I think they can get that 10 with the schedule that they have this year.
Yeah, that's a good one. It does bring up another, I guess, interesting thought that I'll jump on here after we're talking about wins. But an interesting team to keep a track of, and certainly how do you respond to the kind of disappointment you had at the end of that last season, and obviously they're going to be out to try to prove a point that they can do it again. So that's a good team to keep an eye on. One that just a team in general that I think has quite a bit of potential. And when I saw the number, and it does look like it varies a little bit across book to book, but this is a team that I would think is going to be pretty good to come away with what they need to get to here. So it's a team that's been in the news here recently. The Oklahoma State Cowboys. Ollie Gordon is just such a great running back. Like I mean, all they got to do is hand the ball to the guy, and it sounds like they're not gonna. It sounds like they're not gonna suspend him, so that's not a problem. But and typically they're a team that does win, 6, 7, 8 games a year at least, anyways. And the number I'm seeing, depending on where you're at, is either 8 or 8.5. And I think they can get to 9 easily. I know the Big 12 is going to be very, very much a parity league. There's going to be a lot of chaos, like teams beating teams, and they might cannibalize each other. But get at least for them to get to a bowl game and then probably win one because they're pretty good at that typically too. If they need that last one to get to 10, then I would be very comfortable with it. So I like Oklahoma State at that, especially if it's at that. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter if it's 8 or 8.5, but if they're at that line, at that 8 line. Yeah, I think they get to 9. So that's one that I would take a look at on what you can get out of it.
Yeah, I actually took a peek at that. I was just a little bit, for me, I was a little bit apprehensive with just the new teams coming in the league.
Yeah.
I kind of try to stay away from most of the conferences, but I mean, you can't really do it, like every damn conference has new teams in it. So it's like, what are you going to do? So, but that was one I definitely, I like that one. I might tail some of that one on with you there. Next one I have, speaking of, I guess an expanding conference is Missouri and the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Their over under was 9.5. Actually, I know they had a pretty good year last year where they get 11 wins,
Mm-hmm.
bowl game win against Ohio State, even though it was about half the team for Ohio State played. But I mean, they still won, so I'll give them credit. But I actually like the unders for them, and I actually do think it's probably about 9 though. So I don't think they're much under. If it was a 9, I probably would have stayed away from it because I think it'd be a push. But they play A&M. I know a lot of it been made about their schedule and like
Mm-hmm.
how it's manageable and easy, and to me that's always a little bit iffy. I don't like those kind of comments, but for as easy or manageable a schedule as they have, in a 5 week stretch, they play A&M, Auburn, Alabama, and Oklahoma. I think there's a game with like some Massachusetts in there. SEC always does that stupid non-con in the middle of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically, I mean, and to me, for them to get over that 9.5 to get to 10, they're going to have to beat at least 2 of those 4 teams that I just mentioned. Not saying they couldn't do it, but even if they go 2-2 there, that basically means you have to run the table in the rest of the games. And like you said in the Big 12 SEC, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 games that you bank as a win that don't end up that way. So I think, I mean, if it was 9, I'd like that number. But just I think they're going to hit right at 9. So I think that 9.5 is just a half game too much. Don't think they're going to have a terrible season, but I just don't think they'll get to 10.
All right. Yeah, that's an interesting team to watch, just because, like you said, they had a pretty damn good season last year. They seem to
Well,
be
the
on the
running
uptrend.
game was pretty amazing, though. That's that. I
Yeah.
don't think they're going to have that this year.
Well, yeah,
To
you
me,
lose
that's
Schrader,
going to be
so
that's going to be the factor. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have a decent running back in there, but I mean that production is hard to replace.
yeah, he was just incredible. A guy that didn't get any talk until the season got rolling, and then he was just crushing it game after game. And yeah, big loss for them for sure. They have done great recruiting. It sounds like here recently, which is kind of a surprise. I guess that's got to be a pretty tough. That's got to be a pretty tough gig to continue to be really good, especially in that conference. The kind of people you're going to compete with recruits for. But they seem to be doing a pretty good job of it. So tip of the cap to them, because when that initially happened, that first round of conference realignment, when Mizzou got their ticket into the SEC, I thought, oh my God, this is a disaster. Like, there's no way they're gonna survive. But by golly, they got into the championship right away, the first
Yeah.
the first run out, and then they've kind of been hanging around ever since, and they seem to be on the uptrend. So I'll give them credit. I'm going to stay in the SEC as well. This is a team that is known to let people down. So I should
Well, they're
probably
going to let you down,
I
right?
should
Or
probably
I guess it wouldn't let you down. Yeah.
yeah, I should probably not go here, but they have a lot returning. It's Kentucky. Their numbers at 6.5. I mean, just to get to 7, I don't think that's difficult. Like, that's a pretty good team. When you're returning, damn near all of your lineup on either side of the ball. When you were a fairly good team last year, I mean, they had a couple of games that were built up as huge matchups. Now they didn't deliver when it came to the game, but still to win 7, yeah, I like that a lot. That's one I would be pretty comfortable playing.
Well, a team that Kentucky will be playing, I think that's one of the games I have circled on their schedule is the old Lane Kiffin boys and Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Their line is at again 9.5. I guess I like that 9.5 one way or the other, but I think they're going to go under. 11 wins last year, pretty good season, and I kind of feel like they're like that on that Missouri line where it's like they seem like when they're not expected to kind of have a pretty significant season, they kind of come out of the woodwork. But it almost seems like when they're the hunted rather than the hunter, they don't exactly kind of live up to those expectations. Just looking at their schedule though, like 7 of the games, like they'll probably be favored in, with like the likes of Wake Forest, Furman, Middle Tennessee. They're not exactly playing the Bears here. So they got some decent wins there. But I would look at that Kentucky game that I mentioned, the South Carolina matchup, and against also Oklahoma, or like the kind of key games there to if they want to get over that 9.5, they'd have to get at least a couple of those, if not all three. They do, like I said, Oklahoma, but they also play LSU and Georgia within like a 4 week stretch. So that's going to kind of be tough there too. You get a little worn down there, and you're going to probably have to upset, an LSU or maybe a Georgia. That's asking a lot there. So because even if they hold serve on those 7 games I mentioned, you still got to find two or three other ones. So I just think it's kind of more of how the schedule lines up than it is anything against like what they'll have. Same with Missouri. I could see them winning 9. I just don't know if they're going to get to that 10-win mark. So that's kind of why I have them just under that 9.5.
All right, yeah, that is. I like that too. I think that's one of those teams that obviously is going to get a lot more hype than they probably deserve to start the season. And usually that doesn't go the right way for you when you've got that built up in your mind already. So yeah, they'll be one to keep an eye on. And I know a lot of people think that they could make noise in the conference in general, but yeah, it'll be a tall task. I'm gonna go back into the Big 12 just because I don't know. I guess I lean that way because I watch a lot of it. But and this isn't a team I guess I wouldn't have watched a lot, other than the fact that the media tried to cram it down my throat the entire off season. And I'm going to do this just because I like to stir the pot a little bit. But the Colorado Buffaloes are joining the Big 12 again. They're back. They're back in the Big 12. I don't know. They wanted to go out and enjoy the fumes of the Pac-12 there for a while, and didn't necessarily make a whole lot of noise there. And of course, now the Pac-12 is a thing of the past, and they're back with some of their brethren along with them here to play in the Big 12. And the over line is 5.5. 5.5 for the Buffs. Obviously, we know how it went last year. Got the hype train built up there early with a couple of early games, and then it all went to shit. And and I think it's not going to change a whole hell of a lot this year. Now, don't get me wrong. I think they have some good players. Obviously Sanders is a guy that a lot of people are looking at. Now, I don't think that he's the player that everybody keeps saying he is, as far as like number one QB to come out of the draft type of deal. I think that mindset's going to change by the time the season's over. But the one that I do love is Travis Hunter. I mean, that guy's incredible. He can do a lot of things, a lot of ways, and that's why he plays on both sides of the ball. That guy's awesome, no doubt. He'll probably win them a couple of these games, just to get close to that 5.5 perhaps. But I'm going to say under. The schedule isn't necessarily overly difficult, and it's not necessarily easy either. Some of the games where they're going to have teams that got them, really circled on the calendar, they're on the road, so that doesn't help. They certainly have not made their share of friends, and I'm sure they will continue to not do that. They provide every team that they play with lots of bulletin board material just because of the attitude that they have and the way they talk, and that's not going to fly with a lot of these teams that are going to play them for the first time. So, I don't like it. They do have Utah on the slate. They've got Oklahoma State on the slate. They go to Nebraska this year, and certainly that's a revenge tour for the Cornhuskers. Colorado State also, we're going to want to get them back after the whole triple overtime fiasco last year. So I would go with the under there. I like how that sets up for that side of the coin.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how I think last year, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I remember being close to this 6 or almost 7 their win total. So
right, yeah.
the books are a little bit scared, a little bit more grounded in reality this year, and that's probably even a little high. Yeah, I definitely see that one. That's another one I liked a lot too, but I thought it was almost like too easy. But I'll probably still throw something on there. It's like something's got to be up, like win 6 and whatever. Like I don't know, it seems like something's off. I'm actually going to stay in the Big 12 too, right? I'm trying to keep all these schools and teams right. Arizona, right?
Yep,
They're coming
yep,
in,
yep.
right? Yeah, got the Wildcats coming to town. They're over under same 5.5. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's way
I
low to
agree.
me. I mean, they had a. I know they kind of went on a run last year and had a kind of a strong finish to get to those 10 wins, but still, I mean, I think with the new coach, you could kind of look at it of two ways of either that's going to kind of invigorate and get them going, or it's going to be like the rebuilding. So I'm hoping it's the former rather than the latter. Of course, the early games will be kind of tricky here. To me, is the Kansas State and Utah games. They're
Yeah.
in the month of September. Maybe you could split those. That kind of gets you on your way there. But after that, honestly, I mean, you got the likes of, uh, Texas Tech is always kind of a 50-50 to me. Of course, you play Colorado. West Virginia is honestly they've kind of been on a downside from what they were, 5 or 6 years ago. And you got like a Central Florida, Houston,
Mm-hmm.
TCU, and then your rivalry game with Arizona State. So I mean, with those games I mentioned, you figure you get 4 or 5 of those, and you got the non-conference with New Mexico, Northern Arizona. Get 1 or 2 there, and then maybe split those. That gives you 6 or 7, and you hit the over. So it's not. I mean, it's not a. I'm not big. I don't think they're going to have a 10-win season, but I think they can get to 6, maybe 8 wins, 7, 8 wins, something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That was one I kind of peaked at already too, and it was like, yeah, man, just what they
Well,
have
it makes you
returning.
wonder because it's like it seems so
Yeah,
low.
yeah,
So you're like, what the hell? Am I
yeah,
forgetting something? Like,
yeah. I mean, yeah, you
yeah,
lost a great coach, but like you kept the players. Like Fafita
yeah.
stayed. The what is it, McKinley or whatever the hell his name is, the wide receiver. I can't remember his last name. He stayed. Yeah, they got the playmakers back. So I don't know what's different. It's yeah, that's a low number, and especially when you look at it. I mean, if preseason polls mean anything, which they usually don't, but I mean you're playing the bottom tier of the league. I mean
Right.
you've got Houston, you've got Arizona State on the schedule, you've got Colorado, you got BYU. So I think yeah they can get to that. I would not be shocked if they get well above that actually by the time it's all said and done. But it does. I mean, moving to a new place, playing some other teams, yeah, provides some challenges, but they can get to that number pretty easy. I don't know that I'm going to say anything about which way I'll go on this team, but I was just looking through the list and I'm shocked just because of the name of the team, and you wouldn't expect to see this. But the University of Florida, I've seen 4.5 in some books.
Yeah, that's
How
wild.
far have you fallen? 4.5, 5 at some others. But wow,
I mean, I
that's
know a lot of it's
incredible.
kind of the coaching uncertainty and like the kind of but still, it's like that just seems like that seems real low. Like just
Yeah,
and that's when one of those that makes you like I just got to stay away from it
I know.
almost, or
Yeah, that's why
because
I
it's
can't
like
say. Yeah, that's why I can't go one way or another. But man, that seems wild and dangerous to me. Um, I did see. I want to throw. There's one other one here that I wanted to chop at. Now I lost my spot on my sheet here as I was looking at the Florida shocking me thing situation. um,
well, Florida's shocking in a lot of ways, but usually
yeah,
it's not football. Like
yeah, no doubt. Um, Another one that I would be tempted to go over as well, even though I know the schedule is going to be really tough. But Oklahoma's sitting at 7.5. That doesn't seem like a lot of wins to get to. I know. I mean, I think the name is more scary than the reality of it for them. I mean, other teams have gone to the SEC and won too. Like we just talked about Missouri, for example. I mean, who's to say Oklahoma can't do that? I think the schedule is pretty tough, but that would be one that I would be pretty willing to just at least lay a couple pieces on just for the hell of it, because yeah, they're not going to be afraid of going in and playing whoever. That's a team that can do that. I think Texas is going to have more of a problem with that than they are, just because they've got that monkey on their back type of situation. So yeah, that's one I would play too.
yeah, that's actually next one on my list was Oklahoma. I'm taking the overs. I mean, I know this doesn't really mean anything in the big scheme of things, but if you go back to 2000, so what, coming up on 25 years ago, Damn, that's wild. They've only so the line was 7.5, right? They've only
Yeah.
won 7 games once in that period,
Oh
and
my
that was
goodness.
Venable's first season.
Wow.
So that just, I mean, I know it doesn't like make, there's no guarantee ever, but it's just, and
About as
it's
close as
just
you're
like
gonna get.
doesn't happen very often, no matter what conference they're in or who they're playing. So that was the first thing I saw, and I mean, I think that the Tennessee, Auburn, and Ole Miss games, along with Missouri and LSU, would kind of be big there to get them over that hump. If they would go 3-2, maybe even better, that kind of puts you in a good spot there when you got like Temple, Tulane. I know they had a good year, but still, I don't think they'll be the same. You got Maine. Those are the kind of guaranteed wins. Even Auburn, I don't think is a tough out. Like, yeah, you just keep hearing how it's going to be so tough for them, and they got this hard schedule. I don't know, I'm not really quite buying it. I don't think they're going to get 9 would probably be the max in my mind. Maybe 10 if they kind of pull off a stunner there or a
Mm-hmm.
stunner or two here. But I mean, what do we know about Alabama at this point? Just that the fact that they're Alabama,
Yeah.
and so it kind of goes on the same thing. They're gonna win 8 easily. I don't know about how much more, but I think they'll get 8 wins. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
with you on that one. I don't know how many you have left, but I got one more deal for you if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to
Okay.
buy.
Yep. Go
Yeah, all right.
right
So
into it.
I try to stay. I try to stay away from the Big Ten just because of like so many freaking. It's almost like sometimes when you see it too much, it's like I'm overthinking it.
Yeah.
But this is kind of along the lines of that. My at least my thought process with the Missouri and the Ole Misses of the world is Penn State. Their line is 10.5. That's a
That's
that's
a
a
lot of games.
hell of a line there. So I'm obviously going the under. They just got to 10 last year.
Yeah.
I don't mean and I mean this year their schedule, like, it's not like terrible, but I mean, just consider, like, here I'm gonna rattle off this. I think it's like a 5 week span. I'm gonna rattle off the schedule they got here, and it's pretty. I mean, it's more of a name wise thing, but still. So starting on October 5th, they play UCLA, USC, at Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Washington in a row.
Hmm.
I mean, that's not easy. I get
No.
that UCLA isn't what they used to be. Who knows what
No.
USC is? But still, you're going at Wisconsin. Of course, Ohio State's going to be an ass whooping.
Mm-hmm.
And Washington has a little bit to rebuild, but I'm sure they still got athletes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you're, that's, kind of figuring you go unscathed with like a Illinois or a Purdue. Someone's bit them in the ass before.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, even Maryland's. So I think that's you're kind of asking to be like unblemished in the regular season, which isn't
Right.
something that a Penn State team has been known to do, at least in
Yeah.
recent memory. So
Yeah.
I think they could win 10 again, but we'll still be fine because it's 10.5.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go ahead and win 10. That's fine by me. I just don't think 11. That's a big number,
Yeah.
especially with the way the schedules are this year and how much the conferences have changed. That's a lot to ask.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if it's at that, especially at 10.5, yeah, hell yeah, where I'd jump on that big time because that's they haven't. I mean, we've been waiting, and that's been one of the talking points in that conference for a long time, as far as the overall picture of it. Like you've been waiting for them to win that big game. I mean, James Franklin's done everything but win the big games, and he hasn't done it. So who's to say that that's going to happen now? I don't have anything telling me that this is the year that that's going to be the case. So I would, yeah, I'd be comfortable riding that train too. That's interesting. I will throw out there, and of course, I don't know. You can whether or not you want to say anything is totally up to you. But I do like to just at least look at the things that I like to pay attention to here in my backyard, and being a Homer fan type of deal. Of course, I always look at my team, and I always take a peek at what's going on with the idiots across the state too. Um, uh, Unfortunately, the old number for Iowa is only at 8, which typically for them is not a problem. So
Yeah, they said it perfect. I thought it was about.
yeah,
I wanted to. That's one of the first teams I honestly looked at because I thought they might be 8.5 or even a 9,
mm-hmm,
and I was going to go under, but I think they're right about where they
yep,
should be.
yep. I think you're right, right on
Kind of
par
like
there.
stale milk; they don't really change.
Nope, nope. And Iowa State, I mean, I guess from the books perspective, may say is getting a slight bit of love, but it's at 7.5 pretty much across the board from what I'm seeing from other different books. And as a fan of the team, I feel pretty good about that, them getting to that mark. I know it's going to be hard, just because the conference is, like I said before, going to be have a whole shit ton of parity, and there's going to be surprises week after week of who beats who and who knocks who off the pedestal type of deal. But same boat that I guess the same reasons why I kind of felt like that Kentucky line was too low. I mean, they've got a ton of players coming back. Didn't lose a lot. A couple of great players, sure, but the offense is pretty much back intact. You got a quarterback now that's coming into the season knowing he's the guy, as compared to where he was shaky early on in the season last year, not having that role yet. A running back that came on hot at the end of the last season. Two senior wide receivers that have been pretty good proven commodities, and Nolan Higgins. So I really feel pretty good about it. And obviously, like we've always said, we try to stay away from really wagering on our teams a whole hell of a lot. But yeah, I like it. I like where they're sitting at.
I think if you're gonna do one, the futures bet's the way to go because it's not as much in the moment type of thing. It's more of a you could see, like kind of looking at the whole product rather than just
Yeah.
that on any given day they could win. Of course, that's the given. So that's why it's hard to kind of separate your mind from your heart because you're like, the crowd gets into it. It's a bad weather day or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Get a couple of turnovers, but with the futures, I think that's a little bit safer bet. I really do hate that 7.5 because you could see it going either way, especially
Yeah.
with that one game because that's where Nebraska's sitting at too. So I was like, nah, screw you, I'm out of here. I'd rather honestly try to pick the exact number than try to do the total on that one. So
Yeah.
yeah, but no, yeah. I mean, I don't any especially with the conference changing, these are going to be a little trickier. But maybe we'll when it gets a little closer, we'll see if any of these change or if we see
Wiggle,
something else we like. Maybe somebody goes down, we get an injury in preseason camp, and we get a line we jump on or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's going to be part of the fun for us, I guess, too, throughout the season. Is this year is just keeping track, like you said, of who the hell belongs to what conference anymore. Because there's been so much change, it's hard to even know anymore. You see it, and you kind of have that old, your mind just goes back to what you know, and you're like, oh, wait a second, no, they're not. They're the one that's really going to fuck me up is the whole Cal and Stanford nonsense in the ACC. I'm not going to remember that all season long. There's no way in hell. But
well, I mean, I guess the easiest Pac-12s. I mean, we should if we forget that one, we better just hang them up. If we in that conference, I am kind of pissed off that they changed to the Pac-2.
Yeah. I did think it was funny. They had they called it the Pac-12 cocktail hour for their media day thing out in Las Vegas. They just had like a little evening deal where they got together and like, oh, let's have some drinks. Everybody else sucks. Fuck this. Like,
that was amazing. I thought that was like one of the best like marketing things I've ever seen. Like that was freaking awesome. Like,
yeah.
And everyone's like, man, why didn't we get the invite? That's when those years of working at a small town radio station newspaper would have friggin' paid off. You get the credential on a friggin' open bar.
Yeah.
Like, let's go.
Yeah, no doubt. That's awesome.
What didn't who was it? Was it friggin' didn't Big 12 have theirs? Are they gonna have theirs in Vegas?
They did have it. Yeah, they did have it in Vegas.
Hell yeah. See, you might have a little party there going on. I think SEC went to Dallas or something. I was
they went to Dallas.
That's the way to show Texas who's boss.
Yeah, exactly. Let's count out of the new.
Yeah. I guess, but the one thing I'll give them credit for, they said no penalty for the horns down bullshit. Mm-hmm. So good on them for doing that. Like, I mean, dude, it's part of the game. I mean, like that's what college football is, like taunting and friggin', like rubbing your rival's face in it. Like that's if you're not with that, then you shouldn't be in the college football thing. I mean, that's all it is.
Yeah. That's the fun of it. That's why we enjoy it. We have a little side things going on all the time. By the way, too, I guess I don't want to get on a full tangent on this because we don't know what the hell's going to happen. But obviously, the first team that you brought up some recent news. The rumors swirling pretty hard lately here that Florida State and Clemson may be headed to the Big 12 here, not sooner rather than later. I I usually the way these things have gone, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
And with Brett Yormark in the saddle seat, he's delivered every time he's made some sort of inkling that something's going to happen. So I think this is going to happen. Those are two teams that are just kind of stuck in that, no man's land. Neither one of those other two conferences want to pull the trigger on doing anything more for one reason or another. Both of them have very different reasons. But maybe it's not the right thing to do. A lot of people say, why the hell, that's a lateral move for them. I don't necessarily disagree, but the thing that Brett Yormark brought up at Big 12 Media Days that he's been exploring is some private equity funding that possibly could come into play. Now, if that's the case, it would certainly be an off-balance type of deal where they would say, hey, you come over here, we'll give you X amount of dollars, and the rest of the teams would just have to be okay with that. And I would see them possibly doing that if those are the two names. Obviously, everybody's kind of poo-pooed on the conference because you lose to brand names in Oklahoma and Texas. But if you bring in two like that have won national championships in the last decade, why wouldn't you want to do that? So I think that's interesting. It obviously is going. There's more dominoes yet to fall. We know that, but it's just I wasn't expecting that news when it arose. As we have not with any of this, but
usually when it gets out to that extent, there's at least some truth to it. Whether it ends up happening or not, that's who knows. We'll address that when it does happen. The dynamic would be interesting because I heard a comment the other day of how they kind of walk in thinking they own the league, and you got another Texas. So
yeah.
I mean, who knows? Like, I'm not saying it's out. You got to go out. You got to get as much money as you can and back. Fill that pot. I don't disagree with that. Just like it would be interesting to see how that plays out. But I don't know. I just kind of get to the point. Like, let's just get this shit over with.
Well,
and if you want to do this 50 team league, let's just get it going and
figure
it
this
now.
shit out.
It's kind of wasting time. I mean, that's one cool feature on we go to kind of bring it full circle here. We'll close here is on that the new college football game. You can build your own conference basically or move teams around.
Oh, nice.
So I went straight Big 8, bro. Like that's what I had. So that's my dynasty. That's my conference. That if that was still the same way, like I'd be glad and happy with that.
Yep. Yeah, good. Sometimes change is not the best. We'll find that out, but I am going to enjoy the hell out of this season. There's a lot of things to look forward to as far as the competition. I think there's going to be some really great games in some of these expanded conferences, and of course the expanded playoff makes everything that much more interesting, and we'll get into that more as we get closer to the season, but it's going to be a lot of fun. If there's anything that you want us to bring up here on the program here in the future, just give us a shout. You can reach out to us on socials, on Twitter at SJMBets, at CherokeeCP. If you see a line on an over, a win total that you really like, let us know. We'll shout it out here on the program as well. And then any other topics you may have. Of course, you can find the podcast all over the place. We're available on every platform that you can think of. So, like, subscribe, share, send a link to a friend. We'd appreciate that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So we'll put some videos up there from now and then. And, of course, we'll do a lot more of that once we get into the football season as well. So look forward to that also. We thank you for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your weekend and week. And we'll be back with you again in another week's time here to talk some more sports. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.